streaming royalties are confusing. People don't get it. And I think it's especially important for producers and songwriters to understand how this works, because this is the problem, but it's not really the problem with streaming per se. Let me just show you what I mean. So look at this number. Look at this. 58.5% goes directly to the sound recording owner. Cool. Peace. What's going down? It's the Music Entrepreneur Club podcast powered by BeatStars. We're live with our free music business mentorship program twice a week. That's 2 opportunities you can't miss. Really can't. Mondays and Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, beatstars.live. That's where we are. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to sign up, and you definitely don't have to pay. So Dame, how are you feeling? I know Clubhouse has you down, which is great for me because I'm not a iOS user. So this is completely not affecting me.
To be honest with you, like I haven't participated in a Clubhouse room in a while. Like I'll pop in every once in a while just to see what's going on. But a lot of the music conversations have died down. When Clubhouse was at its, well, I'm not gonna say at its peak because I'm sure it's not at its peak yet, but when Clubhouse music was at its peak, like there was a room pretty much any point of the day that was talking about music. Now, not so much. So I'll get to the Clubhouse story in a second, but I do have a couple updates. So in addition to the live sessions that Payne just talked about, I also have my artist management roundtable discussion that happens every Monday at 1:30. If you're an artist manager or want to be an artist manager, or even if you're an artist or a producer, join the conversation. We're trying to create a community for artist managers to network and share best practices. The conversations have been really dope. A lot of conversation around TikTok last week. That was super positive. So we're trying to build that community so that up and coming managers have a resource, because there's not that many resources for artist managers. So check that out. The link is in our Instagram bio. And then also we plan to build out our Discord community. Maybe Payne, if you don't mind, putting the link to our Discord below this episode in the YouTube description. That would be helpful. But just to give people a heads up, I'm learning more about Discord and how it could be beneficial, because it seems like some of the engagement on Facebook groups is starting to slow a bit. I think Facebook is playing with the algorithms again, as they always are. So Discord seems like it might be a good solution to that. So be on the lookout for that. But back to Clubhouse. So I was in a Clubhouse room. Payne, I need your opinion on this, because King Los is on Clubhouse a lot. King Los is a rapper. I think he used to be signed to Bad Boy. Been around for a minute.
Yeah, I just need you to not ruin King Los for me, because he's a pretty amazing rapper.
No, he's a good rapper. He's a good rapper. I'll give him that. I can't name a single song from his catalog, but he definitely can rap. I've heard his freestyles. He can rap. But I just need your opinion on this. And we're definitely not going to spend too much time on this. So he had a room that was called Roland Martin Cancel or Conscious, right? In your opinion, is that title disrespectful to Roland Martin?
Oh man, I don't like titles like that. And this kind of thing happens pretty often. I'm a critic of clickbaity titles.
Okay, hold on. Let's change the example. If I started a Clubhouse room and it said DJ Payne 1, cool guy or buster, would you be offended by that title?
That's actually happened to me before, not on Clubhouse, but on Reddit. So, yeah, it's certainly not framing me in a positive light. It's like saying, Dame Ritter, war criminal or manager, even if you've never actually been commander in chief or played any sort of role in the military. That still paints some negative pictures of you for no reason, just by the power of implication.
Yeah. So Roland Martin actually popped into this conversation, and King Los, I think DJ Scratch kind of called him out for the name of the room, and King Los was like super defending the title of this room, saying it wasn't disrespectful because he put a question mark at the end. Like you're saying, inviting the conversation, cancel or conscious. Like, we got to stop doing stuff like this. It's obviously disrespectful. If you put something negative in the title, even if you put a question mark, you're inviting people to take that side of the argument. right? You're inviting people that want to cancel Roland Martin, or in my scenario, want to call Payne a buster. Like you're inviting those people to the stage to have a negative conversation about somebody. The fact that we can't like apologize or go back on something when we realize that we're wrong, I mean, that's a bigger problem on the internet. But and I wish that more people can just say, my bad, bro, just my bad. Like it was a clickbait title, my bad. But he sat up there and defended the title of this room. That's obviously disrespectful to somebody. So anyway, we can carry on with today's
topic. I have a beautiful story. I got this random tweet about a podcast recently. And the name escapes me. I'm sorry, I would say the name because it ended up being positive. But in the tweet, there was just a line about me and a link to a podcast about how I mocked and attacked somebody. And I think that doesn't seem like me. But I know
mocking or attack. Wait, it does sound like you.
Oh, come on, Dan.
I think it sounds like you.
No, I think it sounds like me being reactive at some point.
They say just out of nowhere you did it, or in response to a comment.
What does mocking mean to you? Mocking is not something that somebody does in response to something. Mocking is like an offensive move where you target somebody and try to personally and publicly humiliate them. So I'm like, I wouldn't do that. So I looked at the podcast and there was a gentleman on there saying that he had an interaction with me where I cussed him out on Twitter and tagged a bunch of people just to humiliate him. And I said, nah. In my head, I knew I didn't do that, but I wanted to investigate. So, with Twitter, everything's archived. So I Googled it and not Googled it. I searched it up on the Twitter search. And what it was me. He was mass tagging just a gang of people. And you know how what a lot of people will do is they'll post a tweet and then they'll reply to the tweet with just tags. So I end up getting a tweet with just like at DJ Payne 1, at DJ Khaled, at DJ Drama, at DJ Head, at DJ First Class, at DJ this and that and this and that. I didn't understand it because one, it was spam, so I didn't want it on my timeline anyway. But two, it just looked like an empty tweet with a bunch of tags. So I retweeted it and I said, what is up with these empty tweets? I don't understand them. And that was it. That's so that can turn into, and this was 6 years ago too. It was dated as tweets are. And that became a topic of discussion on this podcast where suddenly words are being put in my mouth and my actions are being characterized by, words like attack and mock, which I thought was unfair. But I respectfully explained this and linked the podcast to the tweet and said, this is what really happened. People have emotional responses to interactions that in their mind change the interactions, change the nature of the interactions. And, what was cool was they didn't get defensive about it and they actually apologized. And I appreciated that. They said, look, we're a newer podcast. We're learning. You're right. That was clickbait. So that kind of thing does happen. And this is the 2021 version of me where positive outlooks become positive outcomes. So It can happen. It's rare, but I think even if we feel like we're being attacked, and I don't know what Roland Martin's disposition was when he jumped into the Clubhouse room. Obviously, I'm sure seeing his name there was a little shocking for him.
Yeah, and I understand why he came into the room, but you kind of come when you see that, and you're the person that is the topic. Like you're gonna come in a little hot and a little emotional, and you're probably not gonna have the conversation that you really want to have. You're not gonna put your best foot forward. So I don't think he should have came into the room, but I understand wanting to come into the room and kind of defend yourself. But anyway, just for people out there, the learning out of this is to apologize when you're wrong. Like you you might sacrifice a few likes, or you might get more exposure on social media if you continue to be out of pocket, but you can actually build healthier relationships with people if you apologize and have like great communication. There is a chance, if there is any interest in building with people, apologizing actually gets you further in real life relationships, so just to continue the drama for people to like your page or to follow you. I guess that's your choice, but you look like a clown to people that have integrity and that are mature.
And then the other takeaway too is that we're at this kind of ugly place in the world of algorithms where I'm sure this was part of King Lo's strategy. I can't speak for him. This is just what I think was maybe a reason for him to create that title of the room. If it's controversial, people click on it. If it's not, people don't want it. And partially,
but own that though. Like if I created a clickbait title in the room when we talk, I'd be like, yeah, I can see that it was a little clickbaity, but I wanted more people to have this dialogue.
Yeah, well, like the Funk Volume post podcast that we did. I know you didn't like the title that I came up with. It was totally clickbaity, even though it had everything to do with the content of the podcast. I just kind of focused on like a funny piece of it that
I don't even remember the title. What was it?
Something about us being broke, because that's what all the commentary was. Not all the commentary, but some of the standout negative commentary. And hey, it got like 20,000 views. So that's for a podcast for us. That's pretty high on the YouTube platform. And I hate that it comes down to that, because I should just be able to title it, analysis of Funk Volume podcast. But again, that sounds a little dry, even though the content's the same. That title, in terms of the algorithm, it kind of is forcing people into doing that. So I don't know what the solution is.
But there's ways to title stuff that piques people's interest and is not a lie. Like, you have experience with it and learn how people respond to things. But, you can come up with good titles without just being super negative or it being a complete lie. I'm confident of that.
Yeah. Dame Ritter, monster or saint? Right. Should we cancel DJ Payne 1 for his terrible stance on euthanasia? I'm thinking of good ones for future episodes.
People are wild, man. And I think we just need to apologize more. Be good people, apologize more. That needs to happen. Take your ego out of it.
I agree with that. Let's talk about people not apologizing. Someone who's been unapologetic about their platform is the CEO of Spotify. Ever since, I guess, there's the backlash first started in terms of this ongoing narrative about Spotify not paying fairly, and it seems like Daniel Ek just kind of doubles down on defending his platform and their payment structure, doesn't it?
Yeah. I wanted to share these stats because I'm not sure if it was like, I'm not sure why he released these stats, like if it was like some type of annual review or something like that. But it's basically the number of artists whose catalogs generated recording and publishing royalties on Spotify. So, and it was comparing 2017 to 2020. So the artists making $50,000 or more in royalties increased from 7,300 to 13,400, which is an 80% growth rate, 3-year growth rate. Artists making 100,000 in royalties or more went from 4,200 to 7,800. And then the artists making $1 million in royalties on the Spotify platform only, mind you, went from 450 to 870, which was a 90% growth rate. And I saw all types of reactions to these numbers. Payne, what was your initial reaction to these numbers? Were you impressed by them, saddened by them? Did it trigger anything or give you any insight into Spotify?
It just triggers an internal dialogue. But I don't expect that much from Spotify at this point. So for me, the bar is kind of low. But damn, only 450 artists made $1 million in royalties or more in 2017. That's kind of an interesting number.
Yeah. Again, I just want to reiterate, this is only Spotify, right? So if we're having a fuller conversation around how much do artists make from streaming, I don't know what percentage Spotify is of, and I'm sure it changes from artist to artist because Spotify has their own unique algorithms, and it's definitely possible that an artist does really well on Spotify and not so well others. But there's also probably artists that have maybe 40% of their streams come from Spotify and 60% others. So I'm just going to assume for this analysis that maybe half of the streams come from Spotify, and then collectively with Apple Music, Tidal, they represent 50% for an artist. So if we say, maybe if for 50,000 in royalties, maybe we double that number to almost 27,000, and then over 100,000 in royalties since it's 7,800 on Spotify alone. So maybe we can say like 16,000 artists. So when we look at it like that, like, should we be mad at Spotify or streaming royalties in general? Like, do these? To me, I looked at it and I was actually not necessarily impressed, but it's kind of in line with what I was thinking. I've been saying for a long time that artists can make money from streaming because I see it with my own eyes. I know a lot of artists that are doing well in streaming. I still own some music that I literally see the checks that come in every month. So I know that there's a possibility. A lot of artists probably don't want to hear this opinion, but I've said it before, like a career in music was never supposed to be easy. Like, it's never been easy. And I think that more artists just want an excuse and then they're just complaining. Even if Spotify doubled their rates, like, the artists that are complaining still wouldn't be making a living in music. Like,
no, but let's put that into perspective because I think that's an important point. So if we're looking at these charts, right, 13,400 artists made 50,000 in royalties, 7,800 made 100,000, 870 made $1 million. When you add all those numbers, you end up with 22,000 total artists, right? How many are on the platform? According to this article that I'm reading that quotes the CEO, he said there are 8 million creators. So only 22,000 out of 8 million creators are hitting these benchmarks, which is a really, really, really small ratio.
But to me, that analysis does it because I think Sherry Hugh posted something that she wanted to see that type of analysis. But the number of people pursuing music, like, that doesn't, I'm not going to say, that doesn't matter to me in this analysis. Right.
I think it's just something to tell people. It's a 0.2%.
Because we also need to think about, like, how many people are technically creators today just because it's easy to upload music. Right. Like, I mean, Jake Paul his music actually does well, but like, he's a creator now. Everybody's a creator now. Everybody that makes a song on whatever platform, it's easier to make music. It's easier to distribute music. So I expect there to be a shitload more people on the platform. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm not looking at how many people are trying to be creators in this analysis. I just want what I would like to see. And I tried to find the data and I couldn't so far, but I just want to see how many independent artists there were making a living from their music in 2000, in 2010, and then 2020. Right. Because if the number dropped, then okay, we have a problem. But if the number went up, then I think Spotify is a positive contribution to the creative community. And I don't have the specific data, but I'm pretty sure there's more independent artists today than ever before. So I don't think this is, I always want artists to be paid more. I'm never going to say Spotify, decrease your rates or keep them the same. I always want them to pay more to the artist. However, I think that the real fight should be with these social media platforms, right? Restricting the reach. Yeah. I think artists would get more value out of Instagram being a little bit less restrictive with their reach than they would getting Spotify to increase their rates 25% or whatever. If these social media platforms really gave you access to the people that want to follow you, there's so much value. There's so much more value to be unlocked there than to get an additional 10, 25% in the royalty streams that you're getting right now. That's probably only like $100 or $200 a month anyway. Most creators aren't seeing that much money. So double that. Say you're getting 400 a month. Now you're getting 800. Is that life changing? Are you now going to live off your music with $800 a month? I just think that sometimes the energy, maybe we should fight both fights at the same time, but Spotify's rates ain't moving that much anytime soon. So I kind of think it's a pointless fight, an argument.
I mean, I would prefer the social media reach, but then again, these are all private companies that we're dealing with. I think some problems with the way Spotify and streaming in general operates are valid concerns for artists. A lot of us don't understand how they operate, so we're just fixating on the royalties we're getting or the royalties we're not getting. And so our response is just kind of this knee-jerk reaction to dismiss streaming as a whole, not based on any kind of data or not based on any perspective that's really data-driven. It's just kind of this emotional response. So the conversation, I don't think, moves forward because it's not at a level of depth that allows it to change anything. But transparency obviously is a huge issue with the music business, period. And so, like you said, we can fight many fights at once, and transparency is a problem. Statutory licensing and all, or compulsory licensing and all that, that's another problem. It takes a lot of the choice away. And what's really something that's important to know is just how streaming royalties actually function, and so few people understand this. And so I think it bears repeating. And I want to share this chart that I've shared before, maybe not on the podcast, but it's important. I think it's especially important now with this conversation about Spotify for people to understand how royalties break down. Streaming royalties are confusing. People don't get it. And I think it's especially important for producers and songwriters to understand how this works, because this is the problem, but it's not really the problem with streaming per se. Let me just show you what I mean. So here's the breakdown of streaming royalties. And look at this number. Look at this. 58.5% goes directly to the sound recording owner. This is how it's always been in the music industry. In terms of ownership, however, traditionally, we had other options for royalty generation. So this is my problem. And this is a lot of people's problems with Spotify, whether they know it or not. You hear about a lot of artists that at one point were signed to majors, right? Or signed to independent labels, whatever. Generally, the label owns the sound recording. This is the master copyright. That means whoever owns the master copyright is getting the vast majority of the money off of each individual stream. So every dollar generated, they're getting almost 60%. And that's across platforms. That's not just a Spotify problem. So if that's what you're generating and you're an artist who signed to a label or whose back catalog was, released through a major, yeah, you're probably not seeing much of that money because you're just getting whatever royalty rate they're giving you and they're pocketing the rest. Spotify is getting a ton of it. Spotify is getting more than the mechanical royalties and the performance royalties generated per stream. think about that. That might be something that rubs people the wrong way. And that's important for producers, because a lot of us think we're covered when we get our publishing. But these two pieces here have nothing to do with our publishing. And that's already pretty much the whole pie. You know what I mean? So the publishing in terms of the streaming world almost doesn't matter. I'm not going to tell you that publishing isn't important, but look, the royalties that are due to you as an owner of the composition copyright are the lowest. And if we're talking about a track on Spotify that isn't getting, a phenomenal amount of streams, you will probably never see a check.
Yeah, and that's something that, I mean, so that's definitely a conversation, and that's something that I believe Tom Gray, was he on the podcast, or was he on? He was on the podcast, because he brought up, like, there is an issue around, like, songwriters. Streaming really hurts songwriters, and for the point that you just brought up, but that's a slightly separate conversation. And I'm fully on board for having that conversation, because songwriters, I think, are really screwed in the streaming era. And then also what I would like to point out about the initial metrics that we talked about is, like, this is just royalties. Obviously, those royalties don't just go directly in people's pockets. They've paid to make the music. There's other people that are involved, management. You got to market the music. I get that if you say you make $50,000, like, that's not pure profit, right? And what I would really like to see is, like, how many of these are independent artists, right? Because I want to compare whatever that number is to what independent artists were doing 2000 and before, and from 2000 to 2010 and to now, right? Because, like, of course, at that time, they had the option to slang CDs out of the trunk in front of malls. I mean, that's what my brother did when we first started Funk Volume. Like, we had our first CD that we put out was called Haywire. It was free online. We put it on, like, DatPiff and everywhere else, but we had hard copies that we sold, and my brother would go up to the mall and slang CDs. So basically, we'd be comparing kind of that, and then to the download era, now to the streaming era, like, which independent artists were, or how, in what era were there more independent artists winning? Now, don't get me wrong. There were artists slanging CDs out of their trunk, making hundreds of thousands of dollars, but that was rare. There wasn't a lot of artists doing that. It was rare. And I think it really thrived in some of, like, the Bay, maybe Kansas City, New Orleans, Houston, like, probably. Yep, for sure. Texas. But cats today I don't think cats today or artists today are really built like that, because they're not, that's not the expectation, right? Are you really gonna press up a CD and become a good salesperson live, where you can go down to Venice Beach and really try to slang CDs, where it's tough selling? It was tough selling CDs, right? Because I've bought so many terrible CDs in the past that the expectation is, if somebody has a CD on the street, it's going to be terrible. Like, so you have to get over that hump and really become a good salesman or saleswoman, to convince somebody to pay for it, unless the person just wants to support, doesn't really care what the music sound like. That's probably most of the sales in the beginning anyway. So, like, we can complain about streaming, but look back 20 years. Are you going to be that person that's slanging CDs in front of the mall? Are you going to be the person that's waiting outside the record label to try to catch an A&R when they're coming out the building? Are you going to be that person that's going to go to the club and freestyle or perform in front of hella people? I don't think that many artists are built like that. And I'm not expecting them to be, because that's not the environment that we're in. All I'm saying is, it was difficult back then. It's difficult now. The people that are complaining about, most of the artists complaining about streaming royalty rates, even if they doubled, it's not going to change. And they're looking for an excuse of why they're not successful. The shit is hard. Payne just said that there's millions of creators on Spotify, and only a very small fraction are making a living on the platform. But that's always been the case because it's a profession that everybody wants to do.
Taking all of that into account, right? Especially drawing off of what you just said about a lot of artists just aren't built like that. Do you think the ratios are the same? So right now, and I'm not saying these are the correct statistics, but based on the Spotify numbers, the data that we extract from that is this 0.2% success rate. So 0.2% of Spotify users are generating enough royalties to make a living on that single platform. So we know that it's hard to make it in the music business. We know that most people fail. Would you say only 0.2%, succeed? Does that seem like the right number?
No, because you'd have to dive a little deeper into those metrics, and I would have to take out the people in that 9 million that aren't pursuing music the right way, right? They don't even take it serious. Like they don't even take it serious. They're not consistent. They're not trying to learn the business. Because if you only key in on the ones that are really working on their talent, really are consistent, really trying to learn the business, you probably have just taken 80% of the people out of that group, right? We went from 9 million to probably more than 80%, to be honest. You probably went from 9 million to less than a million.
Yeah, no, that's true. Because I'm thinking averages are really deceiving ways to look at data. Because say you have 10 friends, you're a millionaire, 9 of your friends are unemployed and don't want to make any money, and you take the average income, and because you made $1 million that year, the average is 100,000, but all your friends are broke. So that's super deceptive. But then equally would be a scenario in which, the opposite is true. And so I don't think these averages are all that useful. So here's the thing, that 0.2% number, for people reading the articles that are reporting that number, are crazy. I mean, that number is really intimidating, especially if you're just starting out and you're looking at that. And I think that kind of stuff discourages a lot of people. But it's always been hard. I think nowadays the difference between the music business in 2021 and the music business in 1999 is that we're seeing the numbers. We didn't have YouTube back then. We didn't have Spotify stats back then. We didn't have all of these analytics back then. So nowadays, we as upcoming artists are fixated on the numbers, and for better or worse, I think there are good parts and there are bad parts. The bad part is that, back then we just kind of maybe had more optimism because we assumed everyone was doing well, and now we're looking at the numbers and we're assuming it's a bleaker picture than it might actually be. So we see a number like 0.2% of artists using Spotify are actually making a living off the platform. Like, nah, we can't do this. We got to just give up. So it goes back to the conversation about artists being crazy. Because, who jumps into that career when you have publications writing that and reporting that there's a 0.2% success rate on the biggest streaming platform?
Yeah, but I mean, think about any profession that is highly desirable, right? Playing professional sports, being an actress or an actor. Like, those are the percentage. That's how I look at music. There's just way too many people that want to make music for a living than there is demand for music, right? Like 60,000 songs get uploaded to Spotify a day. There's not that much demand to listen to music. Like, it's just not possible. So you're going to expect such a low success percentage because there are a ridiculous amount of people that want to pursue music as a career. And some people actually love it. Some people really have a talent for it. And some people are doing it because it's cool. Some people are doing it because they think they're going to make a lot of money or get a lot of attention. So because of professions like that, you're going to get a lot of people that want to do it. I'm sure the success rate to be a plumber is a hell of a lot higher, right? Like there's not that many people that are like, oh shit, I really want to be a plumber. But if for some reason there was a spike in demand for being plumbers, like you'd see more competition.
I think there's a high demand for plumbers. There's a high demand for all kinds of.
No, it's not. So not for a demand for plumbers, a demand like to be plumbers, right? Like
Okay.
if plumbers became the sexy thing, you're going to see a shitload of people wanting to be plumbers, but there's not that many people with busted pipes.
I don't know. I just had a construction guy over here this morning. My people got fucked up houses out here, so
You can win right now being a plumber because, you know, it's not a sexy job, but it's super needed. So you can really win, and you can probably become a plumber. You can become a plumber a hell of a lot easier than you can having success in the music industry.
yeah, those invoices are sexy.
So yeah, I look at music just like the league, just like the NBA. You know, only the top get to play. You know, and that's how I talk to artists. But you can increase your chances substantially if you put together the right team, educate yourself, really work on your craft, be consistent, learn the business, you know, have a compelling story, all the stuff that we continue to reiterate pretty much every podcast, because there's not 9 million people doing that. You know, so the numbers are low, but it's not that bleak. It's still extremely tough, but it's not as bleak as the numbers might suggest, if that gives people any encouragement.
Well, and I would also say too, another takeaway would be to just diversify. Spotify is one platform, and streaming is one. Well, it's multiple income streams in one, but it's one method for generating income, and there are many other ways, and this is a creative field. So be diverse, be creative, and don't let a single platform break down your spirit for pursuing something that you love doing.
That's a great point. And I would add to that, do not focus on streams. Like if you focus on just trying to get your streaming numbers up, that's one revenue stream, right? And if you just focus on streams, what we've learned is that even if an artist does really well on Spotify, it's very hard to convert those streams into actual fans that will buy your merch. A lot of times on Spotify, the way that the algorithms are set up, you know, you might just start listening to music and then they'll pick the songs for you, and you might add them to your playlist because you like them, but you may never even look down to see who that artist is or what their Instagram handle is, so you can follow them on Instagram. So you might there's an artist that have a lot of streams, but have very few fans on Instagram. And if you only have streams, it's like you said, that's only one revenue stream. That means those people aren't going to come to your show. Those people aren't going to buy your merch. Those people aren't going to join your Patreon. Those people are not going to watch you on YouTube. So you're limiting yourself. The focus should always be the fans. The fans. If you have fans, it unlocks revenue potential from all types of different areas. Sponsorship, you know, publishing, maybe some sync. If you have fans and your songs become more popular, so you don't need fans to get sync opportunities. But if your songs do become more popular with fans, it increases the chances of you getting more sync placements. So focus on the fans, because converting streams into fans, like going backwards like that, is very difficult. Streams are still good and people are eating off streams, but like you said, it's only one revenue stream, and we should be focusing more on the fans to unlock the revenue potential of the tens of revenue streams that are out there for artists.
Yeah, and that's the cool part about what our recent MEC sessions have shown. I know for me, I've had a lot of different producers on who are building revenue models that are drastically different from one another. So anyway, well, a couple weeks ago was entirely BeatStars, and then Mubs was more YouTube, and then there are people that are more Dylan Graham, who's on this week, well last week. Email marketing is his big. He said maybe 65% of his revenue. So everybody is succeeding. Everybody who's succeeding isn't succeeding in the same way. And again, Mondays and Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a free music business mentorship program. It's live. You can talk to us, ask questions live. It's interactive. And I always forget the damn number, but you can text a number and get alerted every time we go live.
You could text MEC to 844-206-7800. We'll shoot you a text. And we've also started thinking about the next collab for the Crown contest. So I'm throwing that out there to make sure that we do it. We're just trying to make it a little easier for people to participate. And it might be the way that we start off our TikTok, because we need to start. I've been arguing with artists on Instagram, because that was another thing. We'll save that conversation the next week. About the arguments that I've had around TikTok. But yeah, maybe that's a way to kind of tap in our TikTok presence and get that going with collab for the Crown. But stay tuned for that.
Cool. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. We're here every single Monday. We drop a new podcast episode. So shout out to all the people that consistently listen. We do appreciate it. Peace.